Welcome to Camera Shade Podcast, episode 45. That's right, 45. And today we've got a lot to discuss, Nick, because, well, there's been a shift to Canon.
Shift in the force, you might say.
Shift in the force, exactly. Play dramatic music.
Did you? Exactly. There has been a shift in cameras. Yeah.
So there's been a shift in cameras, and before we get into that, well, we're gonna just discuss what else has happened this week. So, what else have you been up to this week?
Work-wise, it's been actually quite quiet. However, I've replaced that with so I've been exercising a lot more over the last few weeks and whatnot, doing weights and stuff like that at home, more than anything else. But I started running about a week and a half ago now, and I've been on like 4 or 5 runs now, I think, in that time.
Yeah.
Shattered. It's exhausting, but I am seeing improvement every single time. I'm going slightly further and doing that further distance in a quicker time too.
Right.
And I don't feel pooped when I get home.
That's what lockdown forces you to do.
Silly things like running. Yeah.
Because for those listeners who are not based in the UK, you may or you may not know that we are actually still in a national lockdown until the 12th of April. Although having said that, schools are going back on the 8th of March.
Yeah.
So as far as we're concerned, we're still going to be locked down for another month and a bit. But at least the kids are going to get to school. That's at least one thing.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting few weeks to see if we can actually do it right this time. But time will tell. Time will tell.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we'll see how it goes. I mean, I'm kind of glad that my kids are going back to school, to be honest. I think they are glad.
Yeah. It's funny. I was talking to some students yesterday when I was teaching online, and I was surprised that they're teenagers, and I was surprised to hear them say, "Nah, don't really want to go back at the minute. I'm quite enjoying this one." That's not what you said last time.
Yeah. Well, I think there's, it's going to be a bit of a culture shock almost. I think, having to go back to school and everything. But at the same time, I can definitely sense, at least with my 2 kids who are still at school, they're really, they're missing their friends and everything. So,
yeah,
it's a hard time for them. And although they're talking to their friends on social media and everything every day, but it's not the same thing as seeing somebody in person. No. And you can do that for, a set amount of time. But once you go to what is now, we've been in lockdown now since Christmas, basically, or mid-December or something again, I think, and it's the second time. Well, it's the third lockdown already. Yeah. So I think everybody's a bit tired of the whole being locked down.
I think so. And I think the idea of going back to school for them is going to be far worse than the reality, right? On this occasion.
Oh yeah.
Once they're there, they'll go, "Oh, great! Can actually see everybody again."
Yeah. Although I think my stepdaughter wasn't thrilled about the fact that she's going to have to wear a mask in class now.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So there's just some changes to the way.
Yeah.
To the way things actually, work at school, but
Yeah. That's that. Oh, they'll get over that quite quickly. Yeah, the mask is no big deal for anybody, right?
Exactly. I mean, the one thing I'm finding, and this is really since the announcement a week or so ago over here in the UK, that lockdown is starting to open up again. I think, people's attitudes have been a lot more positive. That's kind of what I'm finding.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably true. Yeah. I think perhaps half of that's coming from the fact that, God, this is the end of the third one coming up, and everyone's had enough. I think people are realizing, let's try and do this right this time. And, if we do it right, actually, it might work out, and actually we're going to be all right, and we can get back to complete normality it's still a long way off, that complete normality, probably the start of next year in reality, where we're actually going to be. But yeah, I'd say there's probably something to do with it. Because people have had enough, they're willing to just go the extra mile and do the right things.
See, that's what everybody thinks, and then there's going to be some Senegalese version of the virus.
Well, they're worried about the Brazilian variant at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah, I've never been too scared of a Brazilian myself.
Apart from the Brazilian that you get every week.
Well, of course, absolutely, 100%.
Let's cut that.
Why? Anyway, so that's yeah. So I'm finding that people are more positive, and I'm also finding that I'm getting more work inquiries in at the moment. So that's obviously people are sort of waking up to the fact that things are starting up again, and so it's that's good. I mean, at the moment we can't really shoot at this point. That's still a few weeks in the future, but at least you can start talking to prospective clients and start planning projects and stuff. So that's actually been quite positive.
I think I think it's those people that are also seeing the positive side of it. That I'm going to plan for the best case scenario here. That I'm going to be able to get people in to do some video and photo work that I need them to do. What's the worst that's going to happen? I've got to delay them again.
Yeah.
Let's plan to be positive, and that's what I'm trying to do as well. And I think it helps. It certainly helps. What have you been up to this past week or so since we met with Bure and Gary?
Well, I've mainly been watching footage from the Mars rover Perseverance. Have you seen it?
Missing it. No.
Oh my God.
Tell me.
Right. So for those viewers and listeners out there who haven't, if you haven't seen it yet, there's some incredible high-res film and photo footage that that NASA has released of the Perseverance landing. And I mean, it's literally the kind of photography and video that we have never seen from another planet. It really is mind-bogglingly awesome.
But I've watched The Martian, so I'm assuming that was accurate, no?
Well, it's funny you should say that, because when I went onto the NASA website a few days ago and I had a look. They really release every single shot that's taken by any of the cameras on the rover. So there's multiple cameras on there. It's like a landing camera, and there's lots of different viewpoints or whatever. And they'll shoot, let's say, 100 frames in the space of like a minute or whatever it is. And they will literally release every single frame. And you can
they're legally obliged to, aren't they? I believe.
Well, I don't know. I just find it really interesting because you can kind of, you control around on their website and just literally look at every single thing. And, you've got like 100 frames. They're all very, very similar, of the same rock. You get 100 photos of the same rock. But what was really astonishing was they had some cameras that were filming kind of up into the parachute during the actual, the final stages of the landing. And to see that in high res was really quite something. And then they also had a camera at the bottom of the lander bit, which was basically filming the ground, and so you could see kind of the dust, going up until the whole thing lands.
That's a cool shot.
Yeah, it's really, and because the quality is so much better than what we remember from previous Mars missions, it's just really, I mean, you really get like a first class seat on a different planet. It's just, I don't know. It really fascinates me that we can have that clear a picture of another planet.
Yeah.
And I know there's been lots of photos that have been circulating from like previous Mars missions, but this is really another step better. Do you know what I mean? It's so that's been quite fascinating. And it did like things like they did they released two versions of the parachute opening. So one is literally at a third of the speed. So you can kind of, see how the whole thing unfolds. It's very cool. Very, very
nice.
Cool.
I've got to check it out. That stuff really interests me, but I've not really paid too much attention to that the last week or two when they've been coming out.
It's been one of these things we had because we have the NASA TV app on our Apple TV box, and so we've been watching the actual landing live.
That's cool.
So it was like a family affair. It's kind of cool. It's like maybe a little reminiscent of the of the moon landing that my grandparents keep telling me about. You know what I mean? So we're all like huddled around the TV.
You mean those moon landings that didn't happen?
Yes, you may or may not believe that they did or didn't happen. I don't know. I think.
Do you remember that scene in Dumb and Dumber where Jim Carrey's character is Lloyd is in the bar in Aspen and he's leaving because he's been stood up, or he thinks he's been stood up. Walks out, sees an old newspaper on the wall of the moon landing. Has no idea that it's actually happened. He just walks out all screaming, "Yeah, we landed on the moon."
I haven't seen it, but that sounds good.
Sorry.
I haven't. That's not one of the movies I have seen.
Okay, we need to end here. Go watch it. Come back.
Okay, cool. This may actually be compulsory viewing for later on tonight. Mm-hmm. Who knows?
The second one that they did only a few years ago was not quite as good, but it was all right.
I mean, actually, to be honest, I may have seen Dumb and Dumber like back in the, how old is that? Like back in the 90s or something?
Yeah, mid late 90s, I think.
Yeah, so I may have seen it like back then.
I'd be surprised if you haven't.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely haven't seen Dumb and Dumber 2 because that was kind of, I think when that came out, I went like, oh, okay, I'm like past that.
Yeah.
You know. Also, talking about things to watch, I've been watching the Queen's Gambit.
Oh, I watched that a while ago. Finished it.
Yeah, everybody's been talking about it. And so finally I had to get myself to watch it. And I have to say, you know, my chess game has vastly improved over the last couple of days. So.
Do you know what the Queen's Gambit is now?
Well, yeah, kind of. But, you know, it's inspired me to, as always, when I watch stuff like that, I then get totally obsessed with, you know, whatever it is that's happening in the movie. So in this case, you know, chess. So
I really enjoyed the story, and it's only is it a 6-parter? I think something like that.
Yeah, 7, I think.
Yeah, it's quite short, and so it kept me watching. She was really good in it. The actress, I forget her name now, but she was excellent in it. And but what I really enjoyed about it is, yeah, it's done quite Netflixy as you can imagine. But I thought the cinematography in it was really good. I really enjoyed it. The lighting was fantastic, and some of the camera angles were superb. Some of them were just standard Netflix.
You know what totally distracted me were the wallpapers. Oh my god! Like they actually. I mean, you know. Oh man! I mean, I can't. You know, I sort of seem to remember kind of wallpapers like that from when I was a kid. You know, you go around, like your grandparents' place or something. But man, I totally forgotten that people used to have that kind of stuff on their walls.
Is this like the textured wallpaper?
Yeah,
or the really highly patterned stuff.
Yeah, these like really, really highly patterned, and everything's coordinated. You know, the lampshades have the same pattern as the wallpaper, and you always think like it's camouflaging itself into the background. You know, and then people are wearing. And the thing is, of course, you know, people were wearing clothes like dresses and whatever that were also highly patterned. So you've got this striking pattern on the wall, and then somebody walks in, and it's like an offensive attack on your eyes. You know, it's this like pattern clash everywhere.
Yeah,
but it's cool. I mean, it's, you know, obviously, you know, sign of the times. But that was I got so distracted by the wallpapers. It was unreal. At one point.
Of all the things to get distracted by, wallpaper. Love it.
I know. I usually get distracted by the color grading, but which also was very good in this.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was pleasing to look at as a program, you know, and it wasn't overdone. It was overdone, but in a really pleasing way.
Apparently,
it really worked for me.
Yeah, apparently they were originally planning to turn this into a feature film, and then decided to actually expand it into a like 7-parter miniseries.
I heard that. I think maybe it was one of the writers or directors. I think there was an extra episode which was kind of a little bit BTS and showed some of that at the end of it. Yeah, that's right. It's good though. I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's a really good show. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if for those people who haven't. I mean, maybe for those people who are not in a lockdown type of situation, actually have a life, you may not have seen it. But, you know, so if you haven't, then, you know, go ahead and watch that. It's highly recommended. That's our TV recommendation for the week. We should have that every week.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah. Done.
I tell you what, I have another TV recommendation, another Netflix recommendation, and I literally just started watching it yesterday. And I think it's called like The Art of the Samurai or something like that.
I saw the poster for it, if you like, at the top being advertised, but I've not watched it yet.
Right. So it's basically a documentary. It's actually a documentary about the history of the samurai and the kind of, the like feudal wars in Japan in the like 16th century.
Yeah.
Till the 18th century or whatever. It's really interesting because it's the type of history that typically we don't, like, we over here in the Western world, don't really know very much about. And it was quite sort of mesmerizing, actually, I have to say. So I'm only one episode in, so what do I know? But actually, so far, I'm really quite enjoying this.
Oh, that's cool.
Definitely worth watching.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about that. How long's the series?
Actually, I don't know.
Okay.
That'd be something to check out on Netflix, but it's definitely more than one episode. Because that's another episode, so
Nice.
So yeah, it's good though. It's quite well done, and it's very interesting. Again, if you're sort of remotely interested in that era, then there's definitely a lot of really, really awesome information in there.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Nice.
It ties in with Cara and me watching The Karate Kid the week before. I think that's where that came from.
Love that series.
Well, not the series. We were watching the original, the movie, like the 19.
Oh yeah, no, yeah,
movie.
no. So I meant the trilogy. Yeah.
The what was it? Ralph Macchio and Mr. Miyagi. So
I've forgotten his name. That's terrible, isn't it?
Yeah, I can't remember the name of the actor.
Oh, that's terrible. I should know that.
Well,
I'll flash it up on screen.
Or if you're listening to this, then get in touch and let us know. Of course, you can always send us a message on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or send us an email at camerashakepodcast@gmail.com. So we have recently discovered that we have a listener in Puerto Rico. So if you are in Puerto Rico whilst you're listening to the show, or in fact, if you're anywhere else in the world, you could be in the UK, or, we know we have listeners in the United States and in Europe and in Australia. So no matter where you are, give us a bell. Just send us an email, send us a message, get in touch. It's always super awesome to know who you are and where you are and what you're up to when you're listening to this podcast. And breaking news, we have a new website. So, if you are roaming the World Wide Web, make sure you drop in. It's www.camerashakepodcast.com. And whilst you're there, you might as well just subscribe to our newsletter. That'd be super awesome. We're not going to bombard you with lots of emails every day, clearly, because we're nice. So what we are going to do is we're going to give you an insight and some behind the scenes stuff, or we'll let you know what's happening, what's coming up. So if you want to stay in touch, then that would be a great thing to do. So remember, www.camerashakepodcast.com, and it'd be great to see you there. So that being said, now that we've got that out of the way, what else is new?
There was just one other, because we're talking about films, it just reminded me that I watched one other film, and I watched it with the intention of looking at how it was filmed and things like that, right? And that was the Grand Budapest Hotel. Have you ever seen it?
I haven't. No, that's one of the things that is actually on my watch list, but I haven't seen it yet.
As a story, it's okay. It's all right. It's pretty fun to watch. It's got quite a cast in it as well. A lot of them played like bit parts and whatnot, as you can, as they do. But I watched it with the intention of there were three main reasons I wanted to look at it. And one was the different aspect ratios that they use throughout the film. So present day, I think they were using medium format, and then they go to like 16:9, and then they go to 4:3 or whatever, depending on the year. The other thing was the color grading on it. It's really magenta, but
Right.
it adds to the aesthetic of the whole film and the way it's done and the style of the hotel, things like that. And the third one was the general kind of way it was shot. So they do lots of sort of slow dolly zooms and moving from side, having the character come into frame, lots of that kind of stuff. You know, there's one particular scene where a guy sat in the hotel lobby, and you know, you see him from the side, the other side, the back, then you see him from the front, and it's, you know, fairly fast moving, things like that. And there's a load of little bits like that are worth watching and paying attention to just pick up and just enjoy what they've done. Is it overdone? Yeah. God, yeah. But to learn and to see other ways of doing things, it's well worth it. Well worth it. There's something about the whole film that reminded me a little bit of Sin City.
Okay.
I can't put my finger on exactly why, but it did remind me a little bit of Sin City. You remember that film with Bruce Willis and it was all in black and white apart from the odd bit of colour.
Red or something. Yeah.
Yeah, odd, but there's just little bits of the way it was filmed that reminded me of it. It was well worth a watch.
You know, talking about different formats, have you seen Wonder Vision yet on Disney Plus?
No.
That's very interesting. Because I had a conversation with somebody the other day, and I know he's a massive Marvel fan, and I'm like, you know, have you seen Wonder Vision? He goes like, no, I tried 2 episodes and it was just too weird. It was like canned laughter and black and white, and what is that all about? And I just couldn't get into it. And I'm like, right, you got to stick with it, because what happens is it's like a really slow build, and every episode is filmed in the style of a classic TV show. So it starts literally like with a show from the 50s, and it moves to the late 50s and the 60s. And every episode is filmed in a new kind of style.
Okay.
You know, and so it will eventually get to the full-on Marvel blockbuster look that we're used to from the movies. But there's a reason. I'm not going to give away the plot, but there's a reason why it starts like that. And then it kind of builds forward. It's very interesting. It's a bit like, what's that Jim Carrey movie where he lives in this artificial world?
Truman Show.
Yeah, Truman Show, that's right. So it's a bit like the Truman Show. That's all I'm going to say. But it's super interesting. But literally, my wife and I were in there like throughout the first 3 episodes or something, like, what is this? Like, why is this weird? You know,
I'm sold.
And it's an interesting thing. Like in episode 2 or 3 or something, there's the first object in color pops up. Something falls down from the sky, and it's the only thing that's in colors. There's a bit of a, like, you know, one of those like cheesy 1990s like color pop, picture sort of thing. And then you start to catch on that not everything is what it seems.
Mm-hmm.
And literally nothing is what it seems, as you'll find out later down the series. So it gets really quite addictive after a while. But it's a really slow starter, and I can see how many people have dropped out throughout the first 2 episodes, because it's literally, you know, and the first 2 episodes or something, or 3 episodes are actually in 4:3. Okay. So, you know, so you kind of think, what is happening? It's literally, you know, the cheesy sets, like the indoors kind of house sets, and the, like, you know, the canned laughter and all the, like, it's just weird.
I'm sold. Oh, I'll definitely want to watch that. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it is. It's much better than you initially think it's going to be. So it's very clever. And I haven't seen a TV show that has used these devices in that way. You know, it's definitely a novel way of doing things. So yeah, very, very cool.
That's cool. Yeah, I'll definitely watch. I don't have Disney Plus, so
yeah,
I'll find a way.
So now the big elephant in the room is the shift.
I've been running, man. I'm not.
Yeah, the big elephant in the room. I'm wearing a large size t-shirt. That is like, you know, that's for me. That's like, I've got to get out there and run, man. That's not cool. I'm a medium kind of guy, man. Come on. So, but this is only going to be large before I wash it for the first time, clearly. So, you know.
Well, looks about the right size.
But yeah, unfortunately it does.
Yeah.
There you go. Skinny me.
Yeah.
We're talking about Fat Gary last week. In my case, it's like the other way around. It was like Skinny K. That's what was happening a few years ago.
Oh, nice.
Now, let's talk about cameras for a change, because I think we should probably at least sort of hit on some photography here.
Go on then. Yeah. So I've switched. I've moved system completely. So previously I was shooting on the Panasonic GH5S for video and Nikon for stills. Decided that I wanted to consolidate, so to speak, and move to one manufacturer completely, so I can ultimately, share lenses as well and have some, a bit of a step up. So I have gone and got the Canon C70, which is what I'm filming on right now for video, and the R6 for stills, which is, they're both stunning. Absolutely stunning cameras, man. There's no other word that you can use other than stunning. I guess let's just talk about the R6 for a second for stills. Haven't had it long, so I've not really put it through its paces. I don't even think I've shot any video on it yet. So I can't really comment too much on that. I've, not really been able to go out too much, but I've done some kind of studio shots as well, and just some random snaps, if you like, too. And I sent you a quick snap that I took of one of my cats. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Last week or whenever it was, and said, just have a guess of what ISO that was at. All right. I sent the same photo to another friend of mine and asked him the same question. And do you remember what you said?
Actually, I can't remember.
It was, in the lows, 200, 300, 400, something like that. A friend of mine guessed a similar kind of range, right? But the photo that I showed you was actually shot at 10,000 ISO.
Yeah, I remember seeing those. And then you sent some at a much higher ISO even after that, like 25,000 or whatever else. And I have to say, like the noise performance on that
25,600 it was, I think it was. And yeah, all right, you can see the noise in that, but it's still perfectly usable. You might want to add a little bit of noise reduction on it in post, but it was still well usable.
But even without, I mean, it's, if you compare that to a lot of other cameras, it's just, it really is remarkable.
Yeah. What a wonderful piece of kit. The sensor they're using it is just stunning. So it's only, I say only, that's very unfair. It was a conscious decision to go for the R6 over the R5. And there were two reasons primarily for that. One was cost. The R5, I don't have a number off the top of my head, but I think it's in the £4,500 range, £4,000 range. And this is like £2,500 for the body. So significant. It has, I think the R5 has a 35 megapixel sensor, give or take, somewhere in that region. It's a lot more, maybe more. I forget. It doesn't really matter. But this only has a 20, right? Only. Said it again. But that means its low light performance is significantly better. And it is better. The R5 is still very good, but this is better from what I can tell, from looking at images done on the R5 versus what I've taken myself on this. You can't crop in as much, it does drastically reduce your resolution. But am I printing a lot? No. Is it generally going online? Yes. So does it really matter? No.
Yeah.
But the fact is, what it's also making me do is up my game on framing in the first place. And that can't be a bad thing.
Yeah, it's also, I think it's, it is generally a misconception, I think, amongst many people to think that, more megapixels have to be better. But it really is a matter of what it is that you're shooting. I think if you're like a lifestyle event photographer, for example, or something like that, and or like a wedding photographer even, and it makes sense for you to crop into the image because, you may take a shot of the dance floor and there's some people you want to crop out. And then, of course, having more megapixels does make sense because you're not losing as much resolution. If you're generally shooting wider and you're cropping in, it makes perfect sense. But, if you're shooting concerts, for example, or if you're like, relying on low light performance, for example, or if you're doing stuff where you don't necessarily crop in at all, then it virtually almost makes no difference. There are lots of advantages also, I think, of keeping the megapixels in check, as it were, and that's file size and storage medium and all the rest of it, and of course your computer has to be able to work with those files and so on. And it's not necessarily so much of a problem nowadays if you compare like a 20 megapixel with a 35 megapixel camera. But once you're talking about like, some medium format cameras that are like 102, then you're getting into that territory where, okay, now it's starting to have an effect on other things other than just, your camera. So yeah, I don't necessarily think 20 megapixels is so much of an issue. I remember though when Canon first brought out the R6 and the R5, I remember we did an episode. This probably is like like whatever 20 episodes ago.
Oh yeah,
30 episodes ago, whatever. Where we just couldn't really understand why Canon would bring out a 20 megapixel camera. Do you remember that?
I do.
At the very beginning, yeah. But it just goes to show, A, what do we know? And B, when it really comes down to, I think when you look at exactly what you need the tool for, and this is ultimately what it boils down to.
Yeah.
Then that could become an important decision, and I think,
So what really, really swayed it was that cost difference. It's almost, the R5 is almost twice the price for a handful of megapixels. That just did not seem worth it to me. I'd rather spend that additional money and get an extra lens.
Yeah.
And so that's what I ended up doing. That's exactly what I did. It just seemed crazy to me. It didn't really, it just didn't make sense for what I was doing. And now I have my hands on it. It was definitely the right decision. Absolutely. I love this camera already, and I've hardly shot with it. Hardly shot with it. Absolutely love it. Everything works exactly how I want it to work. It performs exactly how I want it to perform. The autofocus is just, I don't really know what to say about it. It's just wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. So it's got human eye and animal eye detection on it. I've only used it on cats wandering around the house quickly and just taking them quick, down at 2.8 as well. So quickly shooting them, grabbing onto it immediately. When I've done a lot of self-portraits recently to keep me occupied, and it grabs my eye instantly. It doesn't even think twice about it. It's super quick.
That's like, coming from other systems, that is such an advantage.
Yeah.
In so many different ways. I mean, if you think about what we're doing now, as opposed to what we used to do pre-pandemic, now we're filming ourselves because we're locked in a house. We're doing selfie challenges, and all that kind of stuff. And having a camera that can just lock onto your eye and hit focus, even if it's 9 times out of 10, that'll be fine. You know what I mean? So when we were shooting the selfie challenge with Ivan, I think that's when I really realized, having a really decent like iFocus auto system or something on my camera, that would have been, such a saving grace.
Yeah. Oh God, of the maybe 150 shots I've actually taken now with it in that kind of scenario, not one missed focus. Not one.
Yeah, that's huge.
You know, that's just just at the end of the day, does that make it, you know, better? Can another camera still get focus? Of course it can. Of course it can. But all that's doing is it's just making my life a little bit easier. I don't have to wonder whether, oh God, that pose was perfect. It's just missed focus though. Damn, that's not going to do it. So you know, you're just going to get those extra few shots that you may not have got previously.
I mean, focus is such a like, it's a real annoyance, especially when you know, especially in video as well. That's the other thing. Like when you're filming yourself, you see that on a lot of YouTube videos, for example, when you know, when somebody moves closer to the camera and then moves back again, if the focus really stays constant, that's really the sign of a really good eye detection or dual pixel autofocus system. Not many companies have really locked that down 100%, like Canon have. I think Canon are definitely sort of market leading when it comes to autofocus and face detection, all that kind of stuff. Fuji is with the X-T4. I think they're doing quite well. Nikon are releasing an update, like a firmware update for the Z6 or Z7 II or whatever it is. So that'll be interesting to see what's apparently there's some improvement to the eye focus in there, but what that's going to look like, who knows?
Who knows? Yeah, who knows? And you know, I don't know the insides of cameras particularly well. You know, I don't know whether just a firmware update is sufficient to bring good quality autofocus, or whether actually there is something physical which will actually make it better, whether it's the processor or what.
Well, they did improve it. I think with the current firmware is already an improvement over the original version of the firmware when the camera was first released, and it did have an impact on the eye detection. I don't know how far you can push that without making like physical changes, so that's, you know, no idea. But you know what's funny is I recently, actually only last week or something, I read an article from the 1980s or whenever it was, and it was an article about, at the time, of course, a film camera. I think it was a Nikon F, whatever it was, and it was the first Nikon camera with autofocus. So it's just like we're talking about, you know, how accurate eye focus is or whatever. Back then, you got to remember that, you know, previous to that, people were focusing manually. And then, everybody was talking about, oh, autofocus. The camera does autofocusing for you. Whoa. You know, and we're like, so it's kind of funny when you really think about it. Of course, when you take it back to basics, then you think like, yeah, I mean, back in the day, you know, they used to focus manually and it wasn't a problem either. You know, so.
Yeah, man. And that's it. You know, it's, you know, I'll say more about it when about the autofocus in particular, when I get out and about and shoot things like that with, you know, more people moving and, you know, perhaps some animals, but that's not generally my thing anyway. But you know, I'll update further on that as it comes. So like I say, I haven't used the video on it yet, so I don't really want to comment on it. You know, it does 4K 60. It does have similar overheating issues as the R5. I decided as a secondary video camera, I decided that wasn't an issue, and the fact that I could get 4K 60 for 50 minutes, I think it does, before it might have an issue, I decided that was fine. There's no issue in 1080. It just doesn't. There's no problem. It just keeps going and going and going. You know, so as a secondary video camera, that was perfect for me. I didn't see an issue.
You know, what interests me really is because previously you've been using the Panasonic Lumix GH5S for video specifically, and you know, bearing in mind we're talking about 20 megapixels on the Canon R6, but the GH5S had 12 megapixels or something, right?
Right? Yeah.
So when it comes to video, for instance, really the whole megapixel thing is already a non-starter because
we'll get onto this in a second, but the C70 only has like 8 or 9.
Yeah, exactly. So the megapixel war really is a lot more irrelevant when it comes to video than it comes to photo.
And the reality is, I think the lower the megapixel count on when you're looking at video, definitely the better, because you really want your video to be able to do low light performance very well.
Well, and the reason why that is, in a nutshell, in a very simple explanation, is because on the actual sensor, if you have a lower amount of pixels on the sensor, that means each pixel is a little bit bigger, and therefore it's more responsive to light, and so your camera will perform better in low light situations. So again, high megapixel counts will not necessarily be an advantage depending on what it is that you're shooting. I mean, I don't think you want to shoot a concert with a 100 megapixel camera at this point. Technology moves on, and in 10 years from now, it might be different, but that's where we are anyway. But you know what would be interesting, actually, would be to see how the R6 compares to the GH5S in terms of video, because that Panasonic camera was crisp.
Yeah, it was.
When it comes to video. The video performance was really, really, really exceptionally good.
What came out of it was great. Its real downside was is the autofocus. It was rubbish. And even though it was touted as, and I saw lots of examples as well before settling on that camera, that its low light performance was great, in reality it wasn't. It was good, it was okay, but it wasn't as good as I was anticipating it to be. But when you had the conditions right, the picture was really good. Really too sharp, probably, but still really good. I think the quality that came out of that. Have you seen footage of the R5 doing 4K high quality, I think they call it, where it's actually shooting at 8K downsample to 4K in body? It was closer to that on occasion. It's kind of somewhere in between regular 4K on these cameras and that 4K high quality. It was kind of in the middle. So the quality was great, but the autofocus was just shocking. It didn't do 4K 120, only did 1080 120, and that 120 was also without audio. Which you may or may not want, but on occasion you might want that. So I'd rather it be able to do it than not, which the C70 can. And you know, as a hybrid camera, which it still was, the stills were just awful out of it.
Yeah, I mean, so, you know, as far as the video performance is concerned, I'd really like to see a comparison between the GH5S and, and see how that compares to the R6. Because in my mind, the C70, and this is for those listeners who are not familiar with Canon's cinema range, the C70 is part of the cinema camera range. So these are cameras that are specifically built for video.
Yeah.
Really, when we talk about the C series with Canon, like the C70 or the C100, the C200, and 300, and so on, we don't really talk about stills performance with these cameras. They're not really stills cameras. Although, I mean, of course, you can take a still photo with them, but that's really not what they're designed for. And so, when it comes to comparing the C70 to the R6, it's of course the video capabilities that are really the focus of a comparison like that. And so, in that respect, I kind of almost feel like comparing the C70 to the GH5S, it's almost like unfair. Because right from the outset, you can already see how it's just going to be.
Yeah, maybe what we'll do. Well, we're not going to have to shoot new footage with the GH5S because it's already gone.
Yeah, you've already flopped it.
It's gone. But I'll tell you what we'll do, just so we've got similar conditions, is next time we're able to shoot an episode in person, we'll shoot a quick segment on the C70, a quick segment on the R6, in the same front-on position that we usually do, and then we'll use footage that we've previously taken on the GH5S in that situation as well, just to see. They're all going to have different lenses on them and whatnot, and that does make a difference. Yeah. But we'll keep everything as consistent as we possibly can, just as not a technical experiment, but just a quick glance as to what they really, really look like, right?
But the other advantage, of course, now that you've completely changed the Canon is like you said earlier, is the fact that you can interchange the lenses because both the C70 and the R6 are now on Canon's RF mount.
That's right.
So they're all on the the mirrorless lenses basically, which is fantastic because that's the best glass available.
Yeah.
At the moment, it's expensive, but
it is.
So there's always the thing, when you're like almost like I call it a hybrid shooter. When you're shooting two different systems at the same time, that's always the gripe, isn't it? That you can't really, you might have some really good glass that only worked, like let's say on your Nikon beforehand, that you weren't able to use on the Panasonic, and vice versa. So that's that's got to be like I'm guessing that's like almost like it's like one weight over your shoulder. It's the fact that you can use the same glass.
Well, I think it is, and and that does make a difference to be able to do that. And so what I've actually done, and I won't go into detail because there was issues with shipping, and so the glass that I've got with it so far is the RF 15 to 35. I had ordered the RF 24 to 70 as well, but there was all sorts of issues going on related to Brexit and COVID and all of that. It never got here. So I decided, I gave myself a little rethink at that point for, it's really expensive. I mean, it's a really expensive piece of glass, that really expensive. So I decided to go for the EF Sigma 24 to 70 and the EF Tamron 90mm macro with the EF to RF adapter, the standard one for the minute. And all of that cost less than that one 24 to 70 RF lens.
Yeah, and the thing we've talked about this before. I think I'm sure we've mentioned this, or we've talked about this with a variety of different guests in the past. But the truth of it is, especially when you look at like 2.8 glass, like this stereotypical like 24 to 70, 70 to 200, 2.8 kind of glass. I think the reality is, we think of it as being like the pro glass with the best optics in it and all the rest of it. And then usually companies like Canon or Nikon always make like an F4 kind of version, which is a little bit cheaper. And the thing is, when you really think about it, like these lenses, the Z line for Nikon or the new, RF lenses for Canon, they are so good that you got to really think, well, how often do I really shoot at 2.8? Like virtually almost never. Actually, if you're doing headshots, for example, you don't shoot it at 2.8, you shoot at 4.5 or at 5.6 or whatever. You don't shoot at 2.8 because the second somebody moves an eyelid or something, everything's out of focus. It's just
not with this autofocus.
Yeah, but also but the reality is, of course, when it comes to headshots, if you shoot them really super super shallow, then very often what happens is you've got the tip of the nose that's out of focus when the eyeball is in focus, and you don't really want that most of the time. 99% of the time when you're shooting for a commercial client, for instance, that's not what you want. You want some fall off maybe towards the back of the head or something, but that's different from like you don't have to shoot that at 1.2 or something like that. So the reality is actually that you probably very rarely ever actually shoot at 2.8. So then the question is that worth the extra investment into a lens that's maybe £1,000 more expensive? And from a business perspective, you really just break it down. You think like, okay, well, I'm running a business here. Is it worth me spending £1,000 out of my business earnings on a lens on a lens that I'd probably only use once in the blue moon for that particular capacity? And you very quickly arrive at the point where you think like, well, actually, I can run my business quite happily with the cheaper lens. It's going to have virtually no impact on the quality of the photography that I deliver. Bearing in mind when you're doing headshots and they go onto some website, the resolution on those. Anybody who's ever shot headshots for like email signatures will know that you don't need the greatest gear in the world to create an image that's 100 by 100 pixels.
Yeah.
I mean, Do you know what I mean? So it's always that kind of reality check.
Yeah.
On so interchangeable lenses. That's really cool.
Yeah. It's a nice touch, and again, time will tell whether that really has a huge benefit. I think it will, though. I think it will. But I'll on all of this stuff, I'll reserve judgment on everything that I'm saying a little bit until I've really got it out there to use into proper use. But early signs are stunning.
I mean, a lot of the stuff that we do is sort of multiple camera kind of stuff, and of course that's got to be an advantage when you have. I mean, I'm guessing, and this is again, once you'll have to have some time to actually play with them and compare them properly. But I'm guessing, having two log files to edit that come from similar sensors or similar cameras.
Yeah,
that's to match that in post is just going to be so much less of a headache.
So it's certainly going to be helpful. It's I forget which log is on the R6 now. I think it's C log 1. I think it's C log 1. The C70 does C log 1, 2, and 3, plus regular kind of Rec 709 and whatnot. I'm generally shooting on log 2 on the C70, which has slightly more dynamic range at its base ISO. Not that I shoot at the base ISO, which is 800 on that. So this was a little bit of a learning experience for me, and it never really clicked as well as it had with this. I don't really know why. As you hear base ISO all the time, but when it relates to video in particular, or cameras that they're touting base ISO for video, is that if it has, like the GH5S had a base ISO of 400, and I'm not going to get into the dual sensor thing, but that on its lower setting it was 400, and the C70 is 800. There's a little bit of a misconception at times that will produce the lowest noise. That's not what it means at all. That I've in practice really seen. That's where the most dynamic range is. So the C70, I think, will give you 16 stops of dynamic range at that point. Your lower ISO will still give you less noise, but will reduce the amount of dynamic range that you actually have. Okay. And it will, I think the lower you go, you have more dynamic range in the highlights and less in the shadows. And the higher you go, I think it stretches the other way. That may be completely opposite. I'm just touting out information as a bit of an example more than anything else, but that's really what it means. And so, and I had known that previously, but it really only clicked when getting these and really delving into C-Log properly, really understanding the best way to shoot. Generally, you want to overexpose in C-Log. And I'm finding about a stop is working very well for me at the moment. Anything over a stop, highlights will start to go. So you have to be careful. But it's just interesting. Do your research is what I'm saying, is understand these bits and pieces so that you're not trying to use the camera in a way that isn't intended to. So if you think you're going to get your lowest noise at 800 on the C70, you're not. You're going to get that down as 100 still, or 200. I can't remember how low that goes right now. Like right now, this is being shot at 400 because it makes sense, because I've got the lights set up and whatnot. It just works at that for me. This is actually, I think this is at 2.8. Yeah, I'm shooting at 2.8 for me. But I'm not that far away either. Probably, I don't know, meter and a half away from the lens at the moment. So yeah, I'm not really sure where I was going with that at that point. I'll stop rambling.
So we can talk about dynamic range for a second, because the thing about, for those who maybe not that familiar with Canon's range of cinema cameras. So the C70 is basically a camera that's completely, utterly, and totally built for video. And so it has a number of features that are very different from stills cameras. Like, for instance, the one thing that you told me the other day, actually, which I just couldn't remember, was the fact that it has built-in ND filters.
Oh, they are the most exciting. If you take the lens off and change the ND filter on it and watch it happen, it is the most exciting thing to watch happen.
Yeah. I mean, to have that built into a camera, that's just a thing of beauty. Because typically, what we would have done in the past, filming with DSLRs, or mirrorless cameras, was to have an ND filter on the lens, like a variable ND filter. And so an ND filter, for those of you who don't know, is basically like sunglasses for a camera, or for a lens. So you can twist the filter, and you can increase or decrease the amount of, I don't know, sun shading, if you want, that you can get. So you can make your sunglasses stronger or less strong, depending on what the lighting conditions are. And that's all well and good, but just imagine if you had that built into your camera, so you wouldn't even have to worry about having another piece of glass on your lens. I think that's a really neat advantage.
Absolutely. And it's got up to 10 stops of ND filters in there, in 2-stop increments.
And generally, the dynamic range with the C70 is massive. It's like 16 stops, I think I read.
At its base ISO, 800, it's 16 stops.
So 16 stops is a lot of light. I mean, the range that's massive.
Yeah, it reduces, I think, down to, again, just forgive me if this is wrong, just off the top of my head, I think down to maybe 14 or 15 at the lower ISO and higher ISOs. Yeah. I forget exactly now, but it does reduce, but not enough to warrant it being an issue in any way,
It's still considerably better than anything that I'm shooting with at the moment. So
yeah. There's an argument that actually with what we're doing right now, there's no need to shoot in C-Log at all. Could just shoot in Rec 709. And what's really the coolest thing that I've come across so far on this is that, provided I've exposed correctly on it, and I bring it into Premiere and I just add a conversion LUT to 709 straight off the bat, I don't have to do any color correction at all. No correction. Grade is different, but correction, nothing. It's spot on. There is nothing I would change about it from a correction perspective. That won't always be the case.
So this is an interesting thing, because we talked about this last week. Of the last couple of weeks, I've been shooting some videos at home, and they're just quick and easy little, very short little videos. And I kind of, at the time, I thought, they're so quick and easy. If I can get the whole process down to like minimal effort, then I can crank out quite a few of those, in each session. And so I decided to try and shoot those on my Fuji X100F, using one of the Fuji built-in color profiles. And what's actually happening is, bringing that into post, the amount of work I have to do afterwards is an absolute minimum, because the files look so good right out of the camera. And of course, if you wanted to grade it in any very particular way, then you wouldn't have the flexibility as if, compared to like shooting in log or shooting even with a flat profile. But just as a quick video that actually looks really good with minimal post-production requirements and stuff, it really does the trick. And the X100F is by no means a video camera. This will only work as long as that's on a tripod, and, you can barely reach the record button sort of thing. So there's lots of disadvantages. But when it comes to actually just grabbing the file, putting it on a computer, cutting the whole thing, and then literally being done with color corrections in 10 seconds flat, if anything, it's a brilliant method. There's also something that I know that people always talk about Fuji colors, and I am finding myself getting drawn to that more and more.
Yeah, they know what they're doing, don't they? It's a particular look. Yeah, it is a particular look. It's by no means neutral by any stretch of the imagination. No. What's coming out of that is relatively neutral. It's stick on the conversion LUT if you're shooting in log, or straight from the Rec 709 shooting without going through log, and you look at it and you think, you know what? That's exactly what I was there. That's exactly what I saw. Whereas some of the Fuji colors are they have a look about them. Like they've got a slight. You can imagine it a bit like they've got a slight grade over them already in a really pleasing way. I love them. I think it looks fantastic. But it does have that look. It's not like you can go, yeah, it's not quite how it looked, but I love how this looks.
Yeah, that's something, especially with the skin tones. I mean, Canon is very well known for like producing really pleasing, skin tones. As opposed to Nikon files, I always find that's the one disadvantage I find with Nikon video files is that there's something not quite right with the skin tones usually, and that needs a little bit of correcting.
One thing I'm noticing on that is the on the C70 is that there is a shift inside towards magenta. It's not a lot, but it's there, and it is I can notice it anyway. So that I don't know whether that is something that has that helps skin tones, just because it's got that slight edge towards magenta. I white balance every time anyway, but it definitely has an edge towards magenta.
Yeah, that's a funny thing because Nikon files tend to go towards the green.
So does Sony.
Yeah, and the thing there is that's not the best move when it comes to skin tones because nobody wants to look green.
No, it's the worst. It's the worst, isn't it? And okay, you can adjust a lot of that stuff, right? But and it's funny because when you compare, because I've seen some comparisons of Sony footage versus like the C70 type footage as well, and same shot, same everything else you can imagine is the same, as close as you can get it, and you look at them and you go, well, now I don't like either of them because that looks too pink and that looks too green. I want something right in the middle.
And that's when you switch to Fuji.
Dear.
But yeah, cool. I mean, 2 new cameras to play with. It's a bit of a bummer, really, that we're all stuck in the house. We can't really go out and put it through paces.
I know. The couple of other quick things just about the C70 worth noting. And one thing that surprised me, although it probably shouldn't have, but it did surprise me. So I've always shot, when filming, the audio goes to an external recorder. Generally, it's been the Zoom H6. Okay, always sounded really good. I tried out. This has mini XLR inputs, and you can do 4 channels of audio at the same time. So I tried out the XLR inputs on the camera itself, and it sounds so much better than the Zoom H6. It sounds because I'm as you know, I'm audio engineer as well, so I'm used to hearing different preamps and what they do to the sound and what's a good preamp versus a rubbish preamp. This sounds like a quality preamp. It's got the depth, it's got the roundness in the bottom, it's got that. The best way I can describe it is a natural 3D kind of sound to it, whereas the H6 sounds great. It sounds flatter. It sounds less polished. It doesn't have that low end that you really want there naturally. And so now Zoom's gone. Well, I still use a Zoom for other stuff, but now I'm recording direct to camera.
See, that's an interesting thing because I watched something the other day on the Sony A7S III, and with the Sony, you can get this this add-on thing that's slides into the hot shoe, and then it wirelessly connects to the actual camera. And what you've got is the on-camera microphone plus this thing that gives you a number of full XLR ports.
Yep.
So that was actually the one thing that surprised me a little bit about the C70, that Canon went for the mini XLR ports rather than, because obviously, full XLR is the standard when it comes to.
I can tell you why. My opinion why anyway is for pure form factor. They are significantly smaller, so you just need an adapter. It's not a big deal. But the size of the C70, it's not like the C100, 200, 300 and whatnot, which are deep and fairly probably as wide as a regular mirrorless, probably slightly wider. But the C70 is like a large mirrorless camera. It's pure form factor. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, it's funny. This, when I saw that for the first time, after you just gotten it, it looks, when you look at it from afar, it actually looks like a DSLR.
Yeah.
It's only when you hold it in your hand you realize it's actually considerably more substantial. I mean, it's a bigger thing. It's got all the air vents and everything, built in. But literally, when you just look at it when it's on a table or something, and you haven't got anything to compare it to, you just think, oh yeah, it's just the same size as a regular, stills camera. But I mean, it's remarkable that they managed to kind of squeeze down,
stunning,
the original C100 whatever or C200 form factor into this smaller body, and managed to put many more features in the whole thing as well.
Absolutely. And if memory serves, it's either the C200 or the C300. I can't remember which right now, but that's the sensor that's in that. Yeah. So there are people tout the C70 because it's just come out and it's got a lower number, that it's an entry-level cinema camera. And I just don't think that's true from my experience so far. I've not had my hands on a C200 or 300, but from footage I've seen, this is producing as good, if not better in many cases, footage. It's got most of the same features as those cameras as well. And I think the C300 is 8, 9, 10 grand pounds. I think this is 4.5.
I mean, this is where we're back to the bang for the buck.
Yeah, and this has it. This has it. Did I want to spend that? No, I didn't actually want to spend that amount this time.
Yes, you did.
But, yeah. But it just all made sense when you put all of it together with what I ended up choosing. It made the most sense. One day I may get a C300 or 700, whatever. Yeah. But right now, for the foreseeable future, these will do everything I need them to do I can't see why they would never not.
Yeah. And I mean, ultimately, I remember when, we were having these conversations when you were sort of umming and ahhing as to what system to change to, because I think you made a decision to move away from having two separate systems and going into, one brand, as it were, relatively early on. But then there was, you were sort of trying to decide whether to go with Sony or Canon at the time. Because obviously with Sony has some really good offerings on the table as well. There's the A7S III. They've just brought out the FX3, or is that out already? I can't remember.
I think it's coming out now. I'm not sure though if it's actually out. I've seen some reviewers have got them. They're touting out the specs and whatnot. Yeah. So
Sony have the FX line, which is their cinema camera line, basically, and of course. Then I think it's really the differences there are ultimately so small. I'm guessing that it really just boils down to your own personal aesthetics and what you like the look of better and all that kind of stuff.
That's it. That's absolutely it. So part of my consideration was when considering Sony was that it was the A1, right? I thought, well, if I'm going to go the route of Sony, I may as well go for their latest and greatest, And then, I thought, okay, well, what about video as well? That does video. Actually, I'd still like a second body at the same time. And then after weighing it up, going back and forth over many, many, many days and weeks, it just made sense that Canon just made the most sense for me to put those two together. I didn't want Sony, the Sony cinema cameras I didn't like the look of and what they were producing for me. Lots of people will, for sure. But I liked what Canon were doing with it.
It just it always brings us back to the same point, is where you really can't go wrong. These days you can't really buy a bad camera these days. It just really depends on what exactly it is that you need it for. It's like a tool.
Yeah. Totally, man. Totally. And people don't talk about this kind of stuff enough, but do you know one of the things that I love most about both of these is how good they feel in your hand.
Yeah.
I don't know what they've done or how they've managed it and how you can go about changing camera design over so long a period. But they are, particularly the R6, it is perfect in your hand in every way. It feels fantastic.
Yeah.
And the C70 is much the same. Obviously, it's a bit bigger. It's definitely heavier too, as you would imagine, with it being bigger. But it just, you can hold it with one hand without any issues still, do whatever you need to. You can vlog with it still if you needed to.
Yeah.
But they feel really good in your hand, exactly what you want from camera. The downside is on these lenses, God, they're heavy.
Yeah.
They're really heavy. I could, we could talk specs forever, but that gets quite boring, doesn't it? But there's just a couple other bits I will mention, just because I think they're useful to know. On the C70, one of their regular batteries, even though they are expensive, lasts for God, I had to write it down because it just always shocks me. Lasts for 190 minutes.
Oh wow,
which is unreal, really.
That's nuts
for a battery. Plus, you can run it directly from the mains too, from the same charger, which is just fantastic. And you can get batteries which are double capacity too. So they'll last, 380 minutes on one battery, which is just, they're very expensive, but it kind of pays off, right? It's convenience more than anything else. Yeah, you could just change battery, right? But it's convenience that you're paying for. But to be able to then run it off the mains as well is just fantastic. One thing I will note, a problem that I ran into when running it off the mains a couple of weeks ago was that so my SM7B that I use for my audio here as my mic it's called like a cloud lifter. It's a different brand actually, cloud lifter, because the output of these is so low. You need something like that to boost the signal to go through the cable properly. So you've got a loud enough signal going into your preamp so to produce the lowest noise floor, so you get less hiss. If you don't have one of those, you can still use it, but you're going to get more hiss because you have to gain it up at the preamp, which is just noisier. So that's why you use one of those. I was running it on mains, but I decided for a change and remembered why I don't do this and why you don't do this is I put the cloud lifter at the camera end, not at the mic end. Didn't notice when I first did it, recorded an entire episode, and I had loads of hum the entire way through. And I tested it out all afterwards, and it was what I suspected, that this cloud lifter was boosting the signal the wrong end, and it was boosting it at the end. It was going into the preamp, which was near the mains input. Yeah. Put it back, don't use it, not a single issue. It was exclusively to do with that, boosting the signal at the wrong end. So when you see, those who might use an SM7B, if you're using a cloud lifter to boost the gain, make sure it's at your mic end, not anywhere else. That's where they're supposed to be. You think about it's got a low signal, it's degrading. Oh, and then I'm going to boost it. It's not going to work as well.
So how many podcasters are going to be out there who are using a C70 to film their podcast? I'm not sure.
Yet none.
This is more like a note to self.
Yeah. Very true. Very, very true. Oh dear. So here's a downside of both of them. Right. Downside: if you both of, let's take the R6 as the example. It's got in-body stabilization, and then you've got stabilization on your lenses as well. You cannot use one or the other.
Oh, really? Oh.
You have to use both or none at all.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Canon explained that to me. If someone out there can explain to me why that's the case and why there's a technical limitation in that, perhaps, please let me know. But you have to. So if you turn stabilization off on your lens, it turns the body off too. Right. If you've got a lens on that doesn't have stabilization on it, I think you can still use the in-body stabilization without any issues.
Yeah.
Explain that to me. That seems weird. I don't know if it's a Canon thing or what, but yeah.
Okay.
So there was one other thing that's worth mentioning on the C70 is that it has push auto iris.
Right.
Which means if let's say you're shooting outside following someone, if you would, and let's just say you are properly exposed and you go indoors, your exposure is going to be all off, right? It's a nightmare. But what you can do is push auto iris, and that will use the iris to adjust exposure correctly as you go through. And from my little experimentations on it so far, it does it smoothly rather than imagine you're on the front wheel changing the iris and as it goes. That's what it seems like, but don't quote me on that just yet. I need to use it a bit more and get some footage back to make sure that that's actually the case.
I think what we're building up here is a clear comparative test video between the R6 and the C70. I think that's what we need to do.
Yeah, we can do that. I wouldn't be surprised if actually the footage that comes out of them both is similar. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be. There'll just be situations where the C70 will win over it. Yeah, mostly because it's dynamic range more than anything else. But then it's all the other features that the C70 has that this doesn't. But on pure raw footage, I suspect they'll probably be quite similar.
Yeah, so that sounds like a good project. So if you're interested in seeing how the C70 performs versus the R6, or if you're maybe interested in, or if you're thinking about even getting an R6, then that might come quite handy. But before we do that, we've got another challenge that we have to complete first. Now that's going to be an interesting one.
Do we?
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh yeah,
that one I haven't done yet.
Exactly. Damn. One.
Oh. Yes, we do. Yep. That'll be next week's episode, right?
Yes. So a few episodes ago, we challenged Ivan Weiss for a selfie lockdown shootout challenge. And if you want to know how Nick and me fared against Ivan, go back a few episodes and rewatch that. That was highly amusing and super interesting, and actually a ton of fun to make these photographs.
Yeah, it was.
For next week's episode, we have another photo challenge coming up. This time, we've been challenged by Dana. Dana did it for a 5-room challenge. So again, I'm not going to give too much away about that, mainly because I really have to work out how to do this. By next week. Yeah. So this is one that I'm finding particularly tricky, but you can come back next week and see how we fare with that. I think that really brings us to the end of this week's episode. And of course, if you've been listening to the audio version of this podcast episode, then make sure you give us a little star rating. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, you can scroll all the way down on the show page and leave us a little review. That would be super awesome. Likewise, head over to YouTube and give us a follow, or subscribe to our channel, and enjoy our faces in full Technicolor over there as well. But as I mentioned earlier, no matter where you're from or where you're listening from, get in touch, send us a message on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, or by email. Or you can now go to our brand new website, www.camerashakepodcast.com, and get in touch with us there. It would be super great and awesome to hear from you, as always. But that is all for us this week, and we'll be back next week with episode 46. 46, can you believe it?
No.
Almost half a century, man. Wicked. Right, we'll see you next time. Until then.